going to talk to you a little bit, a little introduction about Alexander technique. But then what we're going to do are some things that aren't totally Alexander technique, but are kind of a warm-up, almost a little warm-up routine that you can do if you want before you start playing your instrument. That'll both loosen you up and take away the stress of the day and the stress of getting ready to do anything, and also start increasing your sense of how your body moves. Start bringing that awareness in a very easy way into your system that I hope will just keep increasing for years and years and years. And so when Jeremy first asked me to do this, he talked about maybe some exercises, and so I was thinking, exercises, we don't really have that in Alexander, but I thought I would figure out some exercises. So Alexander technique is based on the idea that we're really doing way too much effort than we need to do things. We have a beautiful coordination underneath us. Everyone has this. We're wired. Jeremy just has a little 5-month-old baby, and he can see that already. You just see in how babies develop, how their head leads their movement. First they see something, and then their head moves, then their body moves with it. So we start moving by a relation of our head to our body. Our head stimulates our body movement. Our head leads and our body follows. So Alexander is about getting that to be a very easy movement. So we have that natural buoyancy, natural floatiness and effortlessness, and we can regain then that natural coordination. And it's also about the whole body, and the whole body at once. But today we're going to be looking at some parts, but throughout we're going to kind of have a reminder that it's really your whole body. So all these things we're going to do, I've designed them so that you can't do them wrong. You can't hurt yourself doing them. You can't like strain a muscle or pull anything. And they're just going to be things that get you to know how your joints move and how your body's put together and how you can do that easily. So first, just to start out, and this is a fun thing that a colleague of mine, Mia Morales, came up with. It's just great. First, to start out, notice some area in your body that feels tense or uncomfortable. Just kind of find some area like that. So you all got that? And come stand up. Stand up from your chairs, come out. Maybe you can step out to the floor if you want. And just notice that area that feels tight. Just move a little bit, take a step, or just tilt your body around and see how everything feels. And now, we'll stop that for a moment. Find an area in your body that feels especially easy. So one that just, a part of your body that feels especially light, especially free. It can be a little finger, it can be a toe, it can be your leg, it can be an arm, it can be your nose if you can't find anything that feels especially free or easy and light. But find something. Okay, you got that? Now keep an eye on that nice, light, easy feeling of that area that you found. And keep an eye on that as you move. And move a little bit, swing your body around, noticing that area that feels easy and light. Notice if you lose the sense of that lightness and ease in that area of your body, and then come back to it if you do. Okay, go ahead and have a seat. So, I think probably what you noticed with that is when you noticed the area that felt easy and you moved with that, all the rest of your movement got easier. And when you noticed the area that felt tight and you paid attention to that in your movement, your whole body felt a little stiffer and uncomfortable. So a lot of times we focus on the areas that bother us, and we're kind of curious, oh, how's this today? Can I pull it or move it and see how it is? But if you actually pay attention to what's easy, your whole body gets easier. So today we're going to be emphasizing the ease. Your head on top of your spine. So where your spine and head come together is just about between your ears. It's a pretty convenient place for musicians. So what I want you to do is put your fingers not in your ears, but right next to your ears like this. And then I'm going to have you, in a moment, I'm going to have you nod your head like the yes movement, but only maybe 1/8 of an inch of yes. Just a tiny 1/8 of an inch revolving around your fingers. Just rotating around your fingers. So this is an axis here. Just a tiny, tiny bit. That's where your head and spine come together, and we have just a tiny bit of movement at that joint, but it's pretty important. So it's, if you're doing it a lot, you'll notice your head will pull on your fingers because it's your neck moving. See how my neck's moving here? But if I just do this, that's just my head on top of my spine. And that little tiny release of your head on top of your spine actually causes a lengthening of your spine. That's what triggers movement of length. If we tighten that and went the other way, that's what triggers tension throughout our body. So it's going to end up being an important move to come back to, and it's so slight. It's so simple, and you can even think of doing it. You don't even need to do it. Just think as if you were going to do that. And for this I'm going to have you find a spot. Well, I'm going to demonstrate it first, and then you're going to find a spot on the wall and try this with me. And we don't have that many spots on the wall, but I think behind the curtains there will work, or pushing into the curtains will work, and maybe over here. So what I'm going to have you do is stand about maybe a foot away from the wall, so not far. You're going to stand about a foot away from the wall, and you're going to put your palms on the wall about shoulder height, have them nice and easy and spread, and then just very lightly, still with that easy, free nod of your head and noticing the ease, you're going to just lean forward a little from your ankles. So there's not much weight on your hands. You could take your hands away and mostly be balanced. But there's a little bit on your hands. And then what I'm going to have you do is just, leaving your hands there, just propel yourself backwards, still having your palms having easy contact with the wall. So you feel that movement from your ankles and feet bones. So everyone up for a moment. So stand just about a foot away, not much further than that, with your palms shoulder height and your palms nice and wide and easy, your fingers spread. And then just very easily, as you think of that nod of your head, just let your body lean in one piece from your ankles towards your palms, so your elbows bend a little bit, not all the way to the wall. And now just push yourself away very slightly by repelling away from your palms. And then do that again. Lean forward from your ankles with that nice sense of ease, and with that same sense of ease, repel yourself away from your palms. Good, and come on back. Come on back to your seats. And as you're walking back to your seats, that same kind of repelling sense can be down on your feet, with your feet. So the idea for this exercise is your feet are going to be like palms. So we're four-legged, really. We're four-limbed. And even though we play our instrument with these two limbs, the other two limbs need to be pretty easy and lively for our whole back to be lively, and for the ease of our arms. So even as you're sitting there, just notice those other limbs there. Same sense that you did with your hands on the walls, that same repelling from your hands where you had that nice, easy contact. You didn't need to stiffen your hands or anything. They just spread on the wall. That same contact is what you have with your feet on the floor. And your body can almost repel upwards from under your ankles. And that's all going to be led by this nice ease throughout your system and that very nice little float and tilt right above the top of your spine, so that you have a sense of the top of you and the bottom of you. And anytime, no matter what you're doing, you can do this, and it brings you back to grounding, and it brings you back to length and upward flow. And some of you are doing this already. You're just going to swivel side to side and let your arms swing. And let them just float up in the air. And then when they get near the end of their swing, your forearms from your elbow is just going to bend and swing a little further just because of the momentum. And you can even let the back of your hands kind of bump into the back of your body so your body stops the swing of your arms. So you don't need to do anything to stop that, but they're floating around and flying out to the side. And then you can even let the back of your hands tap your back. It's a good thing to do to wake up your back, and the Qigong people say it's good for your kidneys. So this is just a loosening thing you can do that'll take some of the stress of the day out and get you to the idea that your whole body just can move very easily. Assistant Red. And I have a wonderful quiz question for you. There's only one place where your whole upper limb, your whole arm unit is attached to the main part of your body by a joint. There are muscle attachments, but there's only one place where it's attached by a joint. And it's either going to be to your ribs or your spine or your head. So it'll be something, we call that the axial skeleton, your ribs, spine, or head. But one of those places, your arm's attached by a joint to your body. Point on yourself, where do you think your arm's attached by a joint? It's actually right there. See this? It's right at the end of the collarbone, where the collarbone goes into the breastbone. And it's a little joint about the size of your big toe. Size of the knuckle of your big toe, not your big toe, it's really small. So here's the only place my right arm's attached, and then right next to it, that's the only place my left arm's attached by a joint. So your shoulder blades, they're attached to the end of your collarbone, and then your arm bone's attached to your shoulder blade. But your shoulder blade isn't attached to your back except by muscle, so it can change a lot. And it's pretty important to have a nice, free, easy shoulder blade for the speed and ease and dexterity of your fingers. Fingers of one hand over to the shoulder blade of the other arm. And if this is my shoulder blade here on my left arm, I'm putting my fingers so that they touch the upper inside edge, the upper inside corner of my shoulder blade. And they can also be on my ribs there. As long as you're not center line or forward here, up in your neck. Your hand could be just about anywhere here, but it'd be good if you had at least one finger touching the inside edge of your shoulder blade here. And then with the arm that's hanging, let that shoulder slump, and the arm that's hanging, have it turned facing you and towards the middle of your body, and your arm just dangling and hanging long without your elbow bent. And see if you can find the very last joint of your fingers on that arm that's hanging. And let the very ends of your fingers kind of dance around a little bit and lengthen around. And then with your hand that's on the very upper inner tip of your shoulder blade, see if you feel your shoulder blade slumping out and down, sliding with your hand. See if you can let your shoulder blade slide with your hand. Good. And come on up, and we'll do that on the other side. So just reach over. And this is the spot where you usually feel the tight muscle there, where usually there's a real tight muscle in there, and you don't know it unless you touch it or somebody comes up to you and does this. So you're just putting your hand right around that area, and you don't need to massage it or do anything special with it, because it's going to loosen, because it's getting a signal that you want your shoulder blade to slide out, around, and down. So you're just going to slump your shoulder blade out towards the very end of your fingers, and then wiggle and lengthen your fingers a little bit, and see if you feel that that inner upper corner of your shoulder blade sliding out and down, and swinging a little bit with your arm. Good. And come on back up. And now just walk a little bit in a small circle so you can see how that feels in your arms after you've done that. So just walk a little bit around. So this is a great thing to do if you're carrying the stress of the day, or getting ready to sit and practice or perform, or you're stressed about performance, because the little muscle that tightens in there is one that tightens from anxiety and stress, and so it can really make a big difference to let that go. Now with your arms hanging, we're going to again find that last section of our fingers, the last phalange of our fingers. from that last joint outwards. And let your arms hang again at your sides, and just let that last joint of your fingers release, so that that last section of your fingers leads your arms into length. So you're not trying to stretch your arms or pull your arms. You're just letting that last joint of your fingers lengthen. And let your palms spread. And that last joint is almost going to curl up towards the back of your hands, almost like a little ski slope here. And just as you do this, leave your wrists free so they're not doing this or this. But just that last joint is kind of wiggling and curling up. And let your fingers wiggle a little bit like this as you lengthen out that last joint. Because the ends of our fingers really are the things that coordinate the rest of the movement of our hands. We're wired that all the rest of the muscles and bones in our arms coordinate wherever the ends of our fingers go. And here's just a good way to just kind of stretch them out without any strain and lengthen them out, so that if they're curled all the time, they have a chance to release and it loses a little tightness in your arms. This is being the last joint of your arms, the furthest out joint of your arms. The other end of your arms, in terms of coordination, and even a little bit in terms of muscle, is all the way to the bottom of your hips. So this is one end of your arms, and this is the other end of your arms. So they're like big wings. So your hips widen, even your butt muscles widen, your back widens. All of that widens to be the power of your arms. So the power of your arms is going to come from the very end of your fingers, and it's going to come from the bottom of your hips, not from here. This is going to be loose and easy. This is going to be for mobility. This will be the release of your hips, will be the power. So put your hands together like the prayer position here. And then press your palms together and your fingers together here, and see where you feel that effort in your body. Just see where that effort comes from to press this together. And now leave your hands here, but stop pressing them together. And I'm going to have you in a moment again press your hands together, but this time I'm going to have you do it without any effort up through this part of your body. Just by letting your hips widen, the butt muscles widen, as if the power for your hands pressing together comes from a release down here. So press your hands together and think of letting your hips and your butt muscles widen and leave your knees soft. Good, and then just move your hands around with the ease up through your upper body and the power coming from the release of your hips and the release of your butt muscles. Good. And bring your hands down. So when you need any kind of extra oomph in your arms, it really comes from a release here. All this, again, is going to be for mobility, for speed and agility. If there's anything in here I call a stretch, I don't mean stretch like pull. I don't mean like what we're used to sensing as stretch. I mean stretch as in we're just extending our range. Going back to the idea of the last joint of your fingers leading the movement of your arms. And your arms like big wings, really coming out from your low back, up through here, broadening, your whole body widens with your arms. And then what I want you to do is to bring your arms up overhead, but as you bring your arms up overhead, see if you let your shoulder blades drop and the bottom tip of your shoulder blades swivel a little bit out and down, kind of, your shoulder blades will kind of do this. So they act as a counterweight for your arms. And then bring your hands together overhead, and then just interlace your fingers here and let those shoulder blades, the bottom tip of your shoulder blades, let that just kind of drop in your back and widen. Good. And from here, we're going to do a little bit of a kind of a stretch, but nothing where there's a pull. So interlace your fingers, if they're not already interlaced. Good. And put them behind your head and have your elbows pointed out to the side. And then what you're going to do here is you're just going to lean a little bit, you're going to arc a little bit back and connect that length of your body with your ribs, your lower rib cage tipping up, and the length of your abdominals, elongating with this move. So it's nothing where you straighten your head or your arms, but you have this whole length of the sides of your body, both sides of your body, and this nice length of your rib cage, with the shoulder blades just being able to release good and slide down your back a little bit. Good, and go ahead and bring your arms down. Because for so many of you, in sitting and playing your instrument, it's so easy to get collapsed over forward here. And this is just a really nice move that just gives you a sense of letting that go. So if you do this as a warm-up before you play, then you'll notice as you collapse forward and you think, oh, I don't need to do that. I can leave this all nice and long and free. So now, joints of arms. So we started with that last little finger joint there. Last little finger, that last joint of your fingers and the last phalange of your fingers. And then, of course, we have the next joint here, this middle joint of our fingers. And then we have this knuckle joint. So with this knuckle joint, point on the front side of your hand. Where is that knuckle joint that we're looking at here? Where is that on this side of your hand? Let's see where you're pointing to. So it's actually here in your palm. So the other joints are where the crease is. And here, this one's in your palm. So we've got those three joints, and then we've got these other finger bones that continue past that to our wrist bones, to these wonderful 8 wrist bones here. And with our thumb, we've got the top joint here, the end joint here, the second joint here, and the third joint joins right with our wrist, with all those wrist bones. So we've got these 8 wrist bones, and then we've got these 2 arm bones that's also part of our wrist joint. So we really have these quite long, articulate wrists, not just a joint that does this. There are all these 8 bones in here and the two arm bones. Hang your elbows at your side and face your palms towards you. And now, leaving your elbows there, just turn your palms facing out and turn your palms back towards you and facing out. And so that movement is made by one of the arm bones, one of the forearm bones called the radius. It's the one on the thumb side. So now take a hand and put it on the bottom of the opposite elbow. So this bone that you feel here is the ulna. It's the forearm bone that's on the little finger side of your arm. So here with your hand here, you're feeling the end of that bone, and put your arms down for a moment. I forgot we have a really good visual aid. I needed a hand with this. So here his wrist bones they're a little mobile here. You can see all those little 8 bones of his wrist. And then here what's really interesting is, so here's that ulna that you were feeling. And that ulna here, it really is, that's the elbow joint. The elbow joints are just, what a sturdy joint this is. I don't think we have anything like this in our body that's that sturdy. See how that goes into the bone there? It's a really sturdy joint. But if you follow it down here, in a way it's not really our wrist joint. It is sort of, but look at this space here. So there's ligaments in here, but it's not attached like this. So when you're walking around and your arms are hanging, just notice, do you have your hand pulled towards the little finger side, and just let it dangle pretty easily. Because we don't want to keep that, this is part of our range, absolutely. This is part of our free range to move this way. But we don't want to always keep that there and keep that squished there. So this radius here that we were doing when we were doing this move, that's what you were doing. You're just swiveling that radius. See how that just turns your arm? And it's done here. So this radius, which is the wrist joint here, it's not really the elbow joint. So we've got this really cool setup of our arm. We've got one bone that's the elbow joint, and that's the one that's really sturdy. If you were gonna hang off a tree branch or something, that's where you'd hang from. That's the real sturdy bone there. You would never hang from these fingers here. You'd hang from your little finger on that side of your arm. But that's the one that goes to your elbow, and this one is the one that goes to your wrist, and the one that swivels at your elbow. So going back to putting your one arm up and putting your hand on the bottom of the ulna and turning your palm forward and back. Then put your hand on the outside of your forearm here, and then turn your palm forward and back. Yeah, so you can feel that swivel. So always this would be a very easy, effortless movement, but it's a good thing sometimes to just remind yourself that that's where your arm swivels from. That you don't need to do a lot with this. You can, there's plenty of movement. Our shoulder joint has more range than any other joint in our body. It has a 360 range to it. So, but we also have this lovely ability to just swivel. This is pretty neat. We're going to just explore thinking of where different fingers sort of come from in our body. There's all this fascia in our body. It's connective tissue. It's like plastic bags attached to each other. And so muscles connect to other muscles in certain lines to allow really easy movement. So with your thumbs, with your arms at your side, just thinking of your thumbs hanging easily, the place that connects to your thumbs is a widening of your chest. It's some little muscles underneath the pectoral muscles, the pectoralis minor. But just thinking of the pectoral muscles as widening as you let your thumbs hang. And then with your first finger, with your index finger, that finger connects to the upper outer corner of our shoulder blade, to way out here. So as your first fingers hang, just see if you sense as your fingers are hanging that they can hang from that upper outer corner of your shoulder blade, that they can lengthen from there. And then your middle finger, that one connects right inside your shoulder joint. And our shoulder joint isn't up here. This is our shoulder blade and our collarbone. Our shoulder joint is sort of inside our armpit here. So it's inside here. And so that middle finger, as it's hanging and lengthening, really connects right to the center of your shoulder joint. And then your ring finger connects to the side of your shoulder blades here. So as you're letting your ring finger lengthen, you can just think that side of your shoulder blade slides out with your ring finger. And your little finger connects to the very tip of your shoulder blades, the bottom tip. So as your little finger lengthens, you can think of that bottom tip of your shoulder blade sliding out to that. And it's just kind of a fun thing to do sometimes, to just go over that sequence, which you'll have both here on this recording, and we'll do that as part of the warm-up. Just so you have that sense of your fingers not just being something out here, but really connecting more through your body. Feet as palms. Your feet grounded because they're just easily widening on the ground. They don't need to press into the ground. They just widen there, just like you felt on the wall with your hands, with your palms. And your body almost repels upwards from that. And you have that nice ease of your head tipping on top of your spine, actually above the top of your spine, and your whole back widening to go with your arms. Now we're going to add the leg joints. And we're going to think of the leg joints like arm joints, because, it's another limb. And so this is going to be like your upper arm here. And point to your hip joints. Where do your legs and hips come together? Where do you think? It's kind of fun to look around and see where people are pointing, because where we think things are attached really determines how we move. So they're actually right at that crease where your legs and hips come together, and they're a little more than halfway in. So put your fingers on the crease where your hips and legs come together. And with your fingers there, with the back lengthened and your head free to float above the top of your spine, take a slight bow. And see if you can, with your fingers, move that area backwards. It almost goes backwards and up as we bend. And then come back up. And you can bring your hands down. So here on Fred, if he bends from his hip joints, he's pretty flexible there. If he bends from his hip joints, you can see where there's actually a little bit of his hip bones as he bends behind him. See those hip bones sticking out? They're lower than his hip joints. See how much lower the bottom of his hip bones are? Can you see that? And so when he bends, those hip bones are kind of sticking out behind him. They're kind of pointing behind him. So again, put your hands on that crease where your hips and legs come together. And again, bow backwards. And see if you can picture those bones sticking out behind you. It's a funny sense. It'll feel like sticking your butt out. You're just going to leave your backs nice and long so you're not curling over. And then come back up. So our knees, they're going to be like elbows. They're no longer knees, they're these elbows. And you know, with elbows, we don't think, oh, my elbows are straight right now, and now I'm going to bend my elbow. We never think like that. Our arms are hanging, we move our hands, oh, that elbow bends. It's the same with the knees. Your knees should always be free like your elbows. And just like when your elbows bend, they bend backwards towards the back point of your elbow, wherever that happens to be facing. Same thing with your knees. They bend forward towards the point of your knees, wherever that happens to be facing. And to bend your knees easily, we're going to bend at the hip joint instead of just at the knees. So same thing, put your fingers on your hip joints, and you're going to move that backwards so you can feel the back of your hip bones. And then as you do that, let these lower elbows just do their thing. They're just going to bend accordingly. Great. And then come back up. Stand with your feet a little more than hip width apart. Because our center of gravity is right here a little below our navel. And that's where we have to balance, we have to have that somewhere between the oval of our 2 feet. The little oval that makes if we drew a little circle around our 2 feet. To balance, we have to have that here. So our balance is a little bit easier with our feet a little further apart. And then putting your fingers on your hip joints and letting your knees be like elbows and your feet be like palms, so you have a nice propulsion upwards from your feet, but a grounding of your feet, and a nice ease of your head floating off the top of your spine, and a nice long, wide back. Bend at your hip joints so the back of your hip bones goes back and up, and your lower elbows are going to go forward, and they're also going to go a little apart from each other as they go forward. They're going to kind of widen apart. Not past your little toe or anything. They're pretty much going to aim over your toes, but they'll widen a little bit apart. And as you bend like this, let the knees be like elbows, and your hips go back, and with your legs widening apart, just continue until you sit in the chair. Yeah. So really, this is sitting. You're just folding at these joints. And another thing this is how you go to bend and pick up your instrument. So if your instrument's down there, you're going to bend and pick it up instead of this, or I don't know what. Instead of that, just because, you know, you want a very long playing lifetime with your instrument. And if you bend in these different ways, this is going to eventually start wearing on things, and you'll have pain and you won't want to play. So this is a good way to really avoid that for all your years of playing. And so having that nice long, wide back, having that nice up that comes from that floating of your head, that little nod of your head above the top of your spine, and your hip joints going back, and your lower elbows just releasing forward with that nice widening of your palms, bottom palms on the floor, it's pretty easy just to bend and pick up your instrument. Or to bend and pick up anything from the floor. You can bend with one knee and then the other knee if you're picking up a large bass. When you're sitting is just folding at these joints. The bottom of your hip bones go back, the knees like elbows go forward and apart, and you're just going to run into a chair, or you'll be squatting if there's no chair there. But once you run into the chair, then you can just let the weight go through your thighs and through the very front of your hip joints, which are here now, not back there. So with the weight going here, this is going to give you a lot more ease in being able to lean forward, lean back. When you're sitting, you're going to have a much easier time with your arms because all this, if you can all see me, but all this will be free to go with your arms because remember, this was the end of your fingers. Your fingers end at the bottom of your hips. So all that's free to go with your arms when you're playing. If you're sitting on your hips like this, and then you go to lean forward, you're going to get this squish again. And your arms are just going to be doing a lot of extra work up here because you're sitting on the bottom of them here. So that's kind of the end of the explanation of the warm-up, and now we're just going to do a little bit of the warm-up.